is how to set up your Google Drive file folder. When you finish all this, you can send me an email like, hey professor, here's my Google Drive link. Go ahead and check my stuff. You can do that. I've still got the spreadsheet and I figured out how to export it out as a spreadsheet. Before I had a problem with it, but now I know how to do it. So this is the breakdown for your team building assignment. You've got 5 points where you're going to write a paragraph of your ordinary observer reaction to the topic. So that first day when y'all met, those first couple of days when you were talking about, hey, these are my experiences on this issue, or hey, here's my research, or listen, I'm really passionate about this. You're going to write me a paragraph about that. The next thing is 10 points is towards your steps to problem solving. Now note the color coding of this document. If it's an individual assignment, it's in blue. If it's a team assignment, it's in red. So to that effect, everybody on your team is going to upload the same Google document. Everybody on your team is going to upload a document of why you decided on this group format. You guys can do it however you want. Each person's opinion, or a group document where it's a paragraph or so, but something, a paragraph to 1 page of why you picked that format, and we're going to talk about it, me and you, in a conference so we can make modifications. For example, if it's a tag team, we don't want just one person giving the introduction, one person giving the first main point, because you're not creating a speech, okay? So you're going to have to give some sort of individual speech of what your problem is. Each person will give an individual speech, and then the solution may be a tag team. But make sure when you work on this that I've sat down with your group and you've made the notations. Think of it like a contract between your instructor and the group, or these are the ground rules of how we're going to run this assignment. Because remember, I'm giving you options. You can do a panel presentation, you can do a debate, whatever you want to do, but make sure you run it by me before you roll up your sleeves and start working. Once again, your individual presentation is 70% of your grade, and that's in blue. It's an individual situation. Now, make sure for your individual speech, you follow the rubric from the guidelines of the policy speech prompt. There are 3 different versions uploaded to Blackboard for you. You've got the original version that I've run for bricks and mortar, face-to-face teaching scenarios. You've got a modified version, which is basically this checklist down here. It's this. And then you have the grade sheet that I used that y'all got when I did your grading, which is a bunch of radio buttons that I click on, then with a commentary where I type up a narrative. Those 3 documents all apply to this individual speech, because I want to make sure that you know how to create an outline, create a conclusion, have 2 to 5 main points with subpoints, and preferably sub-subpoints, with of course the author's name, their qualifications, and the date. And all that needs to be attributed. If you want to run that by me before you give your speech, great, I'll be available for office hours. Now, if you did not do a digital visual aid, make sure that you do that for your individual speech. Moreover, if you did not provide everybody needs to do a full-on body shot, because there's no way I can grade people who are sitting there reading a speech like this. That is not public speaking. That is digital storytime telling. So make sure that you set up your camera or your technology and you are able to create a full body shot so that I can critique your nonverbal, because right now that's what I'm doing. Okay, now obviously I'm not sitting here, I'm looking at this, but I could sit here and read to you, and that is not public speaking. Public speaking is when you give a full-on body shot. The other thing is when you're giving critiques, you need to be on camera. And this, once again, is an individual document that you're going to send each group, but you're also going to upload for me what you've sent them, and then your assessment sheet. So let me go over that. So once again, red, everybody in your group will be uploading the same document. Blue, it's an individual presentation. Now let's take a look at what it's going to look like. Your Google Drive is going to look just like this. You're going to have a file folder called Team Policy Speech. And then you're going to have 7 documents numbered. 1, Ordinary Observer Reaction, which matches this. 2, Steps to Problem Solving, which is your group team document. The next one is Format, and you're going to label it Format. Now, if I was in a group and we were talking about, let's say, gentrification or development patterns, land development codes, I would focus on Heritage Live Oaks. So I would title my speech Heritage Live Oaks. You can title yours whatever the name of your speech title is. Then your assessment sheets, which are these things down here, you can copy and paste that. You can type up a narrative, just as long as that you've made an effort to self-assess yourself in that situation. And then here, I just need you to look at what the yellow is and give me some sort of commentary. This is the rubric that I'll be using. You're not going to use this, but I've labeled the top of each one of these. So see where it says 6 assessment sheets? That corresponds with this right here, assessment sheet. So at the top of each document, I've labeled them for you. So, okay, so then you're going to have a Google Drive file folder with each of these things, and then your critiques, all right? And so here's like a breakdown of that. Number 1, ordinary observer reaction. Be sure to label it. So 1, ordinary observer reaction. And give me 1 paragraph, and it's your individual Google Doc. 2, steps to problem solving, which is this right here. And your group is going to have a Google document. Some of these bulleted points are going to be very robust. Others of them might not apply to you. And then the next one is the format, where you write me a paragraph about the format. It's a team Google Doc. And then, and obviously there's that video that I sent out from my colleague. Make sure you reference elements of that and justify that. And then if you want to, you can reference our conversation as a group to exemplify your understanding of how you're going to roll with that particular format and that presentation. Your full sentence outline should, be just like what you did for the first speech. Now, in the individual Google Doc here, make sure that, well, first of all, let me just repeat myself, that if you didn't do a visual aid, make sure that you have a visual aid that's digital, not a physical object, but something that's a digital element, like a Prezi, a PowerPoint, a video, something like that. It's a full body shot. This right here must identify at least one of the couplet 3 pairs. Make sure that's in your speech. You don't have to, like, say, you know, this, well, if you want to, it might be helpful. So, for example, the 3 pairs are quantitative, qualitative. So some sort of data that you can enumerate, whether it's a percentage or number of people impacted, dollar amounts. Qualitative are individual rights that are not quantifiable, such as right to privacy or pain and suffering. Long-term, short-term, which could be the impacts to your problem. So over the long term, so many trees will die because of sidewalks. Over the short term, my Heritage Live Oaks will be impacted. So long term, short term, quantitative, qualitative, and then attitudinal and structural, which are often the causes of the problem. So for example, people know that it's a problem, they don't know they know that it's a problem, they like it's a problem, or they don't know it's a problem, or they just don't care it's a problem. So attitudinal barriers to the cause of the problem, or it could be structural. So for example, a policy, a Supreme Court case, an ordinance, something that's codified. So at some level in your speech, you should talk about that. Then, let's see here. This could be a subtle ideation, or you can actually say the attitudinal problem is thusly. But really what I want to see is it here in the individual Google document, in the 3 pairs document. Assessment sheets and then your critiques. Now listen, make sure that you realize that you will be docked a letter grade if you do not attend, unless it's a documented emergency, exemplified by the course syllabus, what is acceptable. So for example, you're mobilized in a military situation, there's a death in the family, something like that. Then 10 points are documented, docked if it's not labeled correctly. If I have to hunt and peck and figure out where's the format document, where's the critique sheets, it's a letter grade because it takes time and you're not following instructions. Additionally, if I can't access your Google Drive document, that's additional dock of 10 points. And then finally, let's see, if instructor cannot access, it looks like I repeated myself. Yeah, I sure did. So Now this is the original syllabus so that you can see it's the same point values, because previously my students had an informative speech and they had a persuasive speech. You're doing pretty much the same thing, but you're in groups and we're working on team building. And because it's in the digital environment, we're doing it this way versus having an additional assignment. So it's the same percentage amount, and that's why I have this document in here to reference the original course syllabus. Now, this is the steps to problem solving. Here is where, as a group, you're going to fill this out. Here is what the problem is. Basically, what I've taught in the past is this is an aerial view shot of this. Sound bites mean a one-sentence word, which is pretty much turns into your main point of what the problem is. Now, you have options here. You can make the first sound bite the causes of the problem, whether it's attitudes or structural issues. You can make the second sound bite effects, whether it's measurable quantitative harms or qualitative harms that are more abstract. Or you could talk about previous attempts, which is, what have people tried in the past? Sometimes it just takes raising awareness to make it a solvable problem. For example, my fight with the smart meters, no one knew it was a problem. The policymakers liked that it was a problem because it was tied to smart growth. But once I mobilized people, then suddenly I got the smart meter opt-out program, which I demonstrated was a workable, viable solution that other cities across the nation had done in California as well as Austin, and I provided a workable model. So exemplar models are instances where you show that your solution has worked well in the past. And this is referenced in the Monroe Motivated Sequence organizational pattern. If you take a look at those lectures, I talk about that. So for example, in the case of school uniforms, if you show in a different country, they instituted school uniforms and it was successful in increasing academic performance or decreasing bullying, you're demonstrating that you're not a hack, that this has empirically been proven to be a viable solution to your problem. Or for example, school start times. You say, well, teenagers' brains are wired to be more effective in the morning. And some of us, quite frankly, are more effective at night. You can say, well, in this country, they've actually implemented this school start time at a later time, and we've seen an enhance of school performance and decreased dropout rates. So exemplar models or pilot programs. A pilot program is a test program where it's a small instance of your program where it's worked exemplary. It's an exemplary case study of why your model is successful. So for my example of the smart meters, I said, hey, in California, when they implemented an opt-out program where they ripped off the digital meter and they utilized an analog meter, people were not, their concerns about privacy, or in my case, I would say, being fried like a chicken pot pie, the dirty electricity, because I was literally getting headaches and I could feel the energy from the blast going through my hands. So they said, hey, people were more than happy to pay the $50 to retool and take off the smart meter, put on the analog meter, and then they get charged a percentage rate, or a flat fee, quite frankly, every month. So for me, in Austin, it's $50 to take off the digital technology and to put on the analog meter. And then you're charged, I think it's $50 a month, or maybe it's $25 a month. In San Marcos, they charged me $100 and they charged me $50 a month to have the non-smart meter or the analog option. So I demonstrated, hey y'all, in California they did this, and by the way, 30 minutes up the road they did this. Why can't we do this? It took me 4 years, but eventually they did that. What this is you're basically saying, look, when we came up with a criteria, like for me with the smart meters, I want to be cost effective and have an option. So that was my criteria. So I said an opt-out meter program meets the standard of giving me an option and it's affordable. And so you're just basically filling in this, and just wave me down when your group gets to this. Brainstorming should be everybody's crazy, zany thought. You bounce off each other and make sure every person in your group gives a piece of input. And then you want to make sure that whatever final solution you pick, it meets your criteria. Now, as far as implementation, these are options for you in your speech and how you want to roll as a group when you break it down. Here is your assessment sheet, and once again, the assessment sheet, it matches right here, number 6. So I've tried to label them at the top for you. Well, actually, I did. And then the critiques are just a free-form thing, and just every time you shoot an email to someone, just extract it out as a PDF. I can't open up email files for some reason. Maybe it's because I'm on a Mac, but just upload your PDFs for me and label them maybe like 7 critique 1 or 7 critique of group blamity blam, but it should literally be numbered by this so I can sort it in the Google document. So in sum, it's very important, and this is how I'm grading your team performance. Now I want to say something. Years ago when I was a student, my professor, who's one of my colleagues, and he's a brilliant master educator, he would go from group to group and observe our behavior. In a face-to-face teaching setting, generally what I have done is I have gone from group to group and I walk around, I talk to each group, or I sit down with them and consult with them, but I also sit at my desk and I pretend like I'm working on something. And I tell my students, I'm very transparent, I am basically eavesdropping on you. So when I bop into your sessions next week, I'm going to have my screen off and I may be doing something else, but I'm going to be listening. So I'm not going to be sitting there like this. I'll probably be answering emails that students send me, trying to be as polite as possible, but I have to observe your behavior. And I don't want to have to be an instance where I'm making y'all videotape, because I've got that policy about privacy. So when I bop in, if my camera's off, I'm just observing, continue what you're doing. If you need to talk to me, I'll go camera on. But these are the things that I'm looking for, and this is my rubric. The other thing is, this is the rubric for your individual speech. Now you can do whatever you want. If you want to have a debate, make your speech like this. And then you can go back and forth. And then if you want to have, now the rubric is 5 to 7 minutes. If you want to give a 3-minute speech and have 2 minutes free flow, that's fine. Or a 4-minute speech and open it up for questions from the audience, you can do that. If you want to do a tag team, you could have a 3-minute speech, each individual, and then have a tag team where each person speaks for 2 minutes. One person gives an introduction, one person gives Roman numeral 1, one person gives Roman numeral 2, and so forth, and then the conclusion, as long as each person is then speaking a total for the entire assignment for 5 minutes. So if your tag team speech is only 1 minute, then make sure your individual speech is a minimum of 4 minutes, and then if you didn't do a digital presentation, you do a digital presentation. So, and then make sure your speech is a full body shot. I'll provide some flexibility for the question to answer it if you want to sit at your computer to pull up research so you can throw links in the chat. That's totally understandable. These are some things I'll be looking for when I grade the full body shots. Vocal variety, eye contact. Some students are wonderful with the use of visual cards. I'm a trained debater and I like a notepad. So whenever I speak, I'm using a notepad. Okay, this is a calendar, but I'm using a notepad. Now on Zoom, I tend to actually speak better when I do Zoom versus, I really do. When I write down my ideas and I speak like that on Zoom at citizen comments, I feel I'm more effective than when I actually type it up. So I would encourage you, because in the real world, you're going to want to do that. You're not going to be tied to a computer. And if you do give a presentation in the real world, I have found people who walk away from the typewriter and move through the audience and connect with each person via eye contact are much better at creating a speaker-audience connection than those who just sit there behind a monitor. I've just noticed that at professional presentations, at conferences, at sales situations, and I consult my clients to do the same thing. Now, this time around, if you don't do a visual aid and you didn't do it the first time, it's docked 10 points. Time limits, once again, are 5 to 7 minute speech for your solo speech. And then there's that time limit if you don't meet it. The speaking notes, don't read them. And And then that's all I've got to say for y'all, quite frankly. So just make sure that your Google Drive looks like that. And once again, it's color-coded, blue for the individual and red for the team. And if you have any questions, ask me in class. This is a repeat. As far as the complement of three pairs, you could go, now I would like to talk about some attitudinal barriers to my problem, which are the cause. You could say that. If that feels uncomfortable to you, you can use the synonym, or you can identify it here in your Google document and explain why that was a rhetorical choice for you.